Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ubumfa Podcast, where the Ubumfa crew talk about music, movies, video games, mostly movies, and more. I am your host, Agent Gooper. With me today is Moofish and Radbot. And today, on the Ubumfa Pod, we're going to do a halfway through the year podcast for movies. We made it halfway through the year, woohoo, and we have seen probably a record number of movies in theaters, maybe just in general at this point in the year to talk about. So we wanted to, instead of having to compile everything or do like a top 10 list at the end of the year, but then there's all these movies that we saw that didn't talk about, we figured we would just cover those movies that we've seen so far in a little mini podcast halfway through. To start off, happy birthday, Tom Cruise.
Happy birthday.
Everybody say happy birthday.
Happy birthday, King.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe one of his movies is on here. Oh,
No way.
it's.
Oh my god.
We'll just have. Well, I mean, we'll just have to see.
I can't
honestly.
believe you spoiled it in the year 2022.
I literally didn't even say if it's on here or not. I raised the question.
I think there's literally no way there's a Tom Cruise movie on here.
Exactly. See, that's
Has
what
he
I'm
even
saying.
released one this year? I don't think
There's
so.
there's multiple perspectives, but that's certainly not the movie that we're going to talk about first. If there's even a movie to talk about with him involved, I don't know. The first movie that we're going to talk about, and we're going to kind of just to set the rules, we're going to go relatively rapid fire with these. There's about 9 movies that we're going to talk about. We've all seen about around 20-25 movies from this year, so there's a lot that aren't going to be on here. We might briefly mention them at some point, but we're going to kind of go give it just a few minutes to each movie, and then after that, we'll talk about maybe what our top 3 is, top 3 movies for the year, each of us so far, and then maybe talk a bit about what we're looking forward to for the rest of the year and even further into the future. So cool. First movie that we have to talk about is an interesting film that seems to have, as usual for this director, polarized audiences. Gaspar Noé's Vortex. What did we think of Vortex?
I'd like to say that Vortex literally polarized the audiences.
Oh my god.
Right. You have to look at two different things.
Literally. Okay. Yeah, I guess maybe we can introduce the Vortex for those of you who don't know.
Let me interrupt very briefly. We're going to be spoiling every movie we talk about.
Oh, yes. This is not... Hopefully you've seen the movie if we're talking about it. If not,
skip to one you've seen.
Skip
or go
to
see
one
them.
that you've seen.
And then come back.
Or better yet, go see it. Vortex follows a married couple that is... Well, I think they're married. That is advanced in years. One is suffering from some form of mental deterioration, dementia, Alzheimer's type thing. The other one is suffering from heart failure, and the movie is a split screen that follows both of them pretty much constantly throughout their remaining days. Sometimes it'll show other people too, but you're almost always seeing two perspectives at all times, and that's what it is. So yeah, what did we think about it?
I'd like to say that off the bat, I didn't know that it was split into
Nor
two
did I.
frames the whole movie before I saw it. I also would like to briefly say I hadn't seen Lux Eterna, his last movie, before seeing Vortex. I saw it afterwards and realized that he kind of attempts something similar with 2 or 3 frames in Lux Eterna. So this is more of like a completely fleshed out version of that, because this movie is pretty long, and you get maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes of the movie where it's not split into 2 perspectives, which is just the beginning.
Oh, and it's interesting that you mentioned the length, because I had completely forgot about the length of the movie, because it weirdly didn't feel long.
No, and
despite what it is for how long it is, I don't think about it as like a long movie that I was like dying during.
That may have came across as not good, but that was not a complaint. This is an instance where it didn't really feel long, but it justifies its length. It also justifies its format, because I feel like you hear that something is split into like 2 cameras, 2 scenes at the same time. It sounds like it might be a gimmick, but anybody who's hip and knows what Gaspar's about knows that it's not going to be a gimmick, and it wasn't. It was pretty unbelievable, honestly.
Yes, and it's Because normally in a situation like that, you would just intercut, the two perspectives. But Gaspar didn't want to just intercut for a scene. He's doing it for the whole movie. It's about the two perspectives constantly contrasting each other, and it creates, even from the get go, you get a lot of anxiety, because the movie, like the first real scene of the movie is the wife with mental problems goes off on a walk and just leaves.
Yep.
And then next thing you know, she's lost, and at the same time you're watching the husband realize she's gone and then trying to find her. And that's where it's crazy, because you get scenes where they're apart, and you get this anxiety of, oh, what's going to happen to her? Is he going to find her? And then when they do start to clash, it's always just breaks your brain a little bit to watch two people in the same room with each a different camera following a different person. So you can see the same person from two perspectives, one from the camera focusing on them and one from the camera not focusing on them. It's just, yeah, it's interesting.
Of course, with the Vortex, I mean, I didn't see Lux Eterna, but the whole sort of deal, because they're sort of, entwined, because he was making Lux Eterna and he was doing the split screen sort of thing, split screen idea. And then he had a health scare.
Yeah.
I don't remember what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, a major one where he thought he might die, and so he made Vortex to, which is really, it was his first sort of movie that wasn't so crazy and so bombastic, coming off of Climax.
Yes.
And Enter the Void and all those.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decided to make a more simple story of just people growing old. Of course, I mean, it's still a Gaspar Noé movie.
Absolutely.
It never makes you go what the fuck, but it makes you go, it gives you that sense of unease the whole time.
Yes.
There's drug use throughout. I mean, it's in his other movies, it's recreational, people getting spiking the sangria. But in Vortex, the wife was a psychiatrist, and she would write her own prescriptions even though she had severe dementia.
Yes.
And of course the son, he's on heroin.
And he sells drugs.
Yep.
Yeah. To get by.
Or actually,
doesn't he?
I don't remember. I think he worked for one of those the places where they give out kits.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So people can safely consume their drugs.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, that sounds all right. Yeah.
But of course, he himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I if I remember right, the implication was that he had used to do it, and that was a problem for the family, was his drug use, and he got over it, and it creeps back in, as his mom and dad are losing their minds.
Well, and his well, I don't know if it's his wife, his girlfriend, or his ex-wife or something. She also has mental issues of some kind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a rough situation, and this movie, like you're saying, this movie feels almost more serious in how he's looking at drugs, and also it's just going off what you're saying with his own health scare. The movie almost feels like a spontaneous look at death. If it's he just decided, oh, I'm gonna make a movie about what I'm experiencing right now, as far as my thoughts are on. It's like a check-in. What do I feel about death? How do I feel about aging? What do I feel about drugs? And it almost feels spontaneous in that way.
Yeah, because it kind of works with the movie itself, because you don't just wake up one day and have dementia.
No.
You don't just wake up one day and
have heart disease.
Usually you don't just wake up one day and then, oh, I'm dead. You don't go from healthy to unhealthy and then you die. You're stuck in the vortex, right? When you're stuck in the toilet filled with shit and drugs.
This is one of the most unbelievable scenes of the whole year.
Oh my!
Maybe if you could call it a scene, I don't even know. But, good
Lord,
that was just unreal. You just feel you feel a pit in your stomach. Just
it's a movie that makes you feel like you're saying that sense of unease, and as an audience member, you're empathizing with these characters, and you yourself do not feel safe, and for good reason, because your two characters eventually bite it. It's you don't feel safe as an audience member because the characters themselves are not safe.
Yep.
And it's pretty much Gaspar Noé. I haven't seen all of his movies, but the thing sort of with him is that his movies sort of I don't know how to say it, they sort of defy symbolism, not they ignore it, but like you think, just think in the movie, you know, you can say like, you know, in Vortex, you can say, oh, you know, this represents that, you know, this is that and that. But I guess the ultimate, you know, message, if you can get one, is just, you know, you're gonna die, you're gonna grow old,
Yeah.
you're gonna lose your mind, and then you're gonna die.
Yeah. Like,
You know,
yeah.
and it's not like, it's not trying to use that as sort of like a metaphor for something else. It's just like, I mean, that's gonna happen, and you can watch it unfold.
Yeah. It's designed to be very sobering. Like I think about especially that scene at the very end where it's their son and the son's child at their like wake or whatever, and the son asks like, "Oh, are they at a?" Or their kid asks like, "Hey, are they? You know, is this their new home?" And they're like, "No, this isn't a fucking home. This is just where people die and are now alone." It's like it's there's no sugarcoating.
Also, the two leads. I mean, for one of them is Dario Argento, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I actually didn't really know that going in either. I knew so little about this movie, which was a blessing. But I mean, he kills it, and oh my gosh, I don't know her name. The wife was also spectacular, and I've never seen her in anything else. But I mean, absolutely incredible. They should be up for awards.
Francois Lebrun.
Yes, incredible.
Yeah.
Yes, and the son was good also.
Yep.
Alex Lutz was excellent. Yep. Yeah.
It would just like it would be. I mean, with the whole unease thing in the two frames, you'd have a scene where all four characters, so the husband, the wife, the son, and the son's son, like I guess the grandson, are all sitting at the same table, and one shot will be like framed a certain way, and the other shot will be framed almost the same way, so that it's like it's taking up the full screen, but Gaspar will slightly tilt the camera up, or like slightly tilt it to the left or something, so it's like just a little bit off.
Yes.
And it's just unbelievable. I'd also like to add, I really don't think anybody in the game uses the camera like Gaspar does. In all of his movies, he understands it like no one else. He's a genius with it.
That's fair.
You know, it always feels like, especially in climax, it always feels like a sort of disembodied dream. Like you're just some sort of
a fly on the wall.
You as the audience, you're sort of like floating around.
Yep.
Yes.
This sort of like nightmare.
Well, and you get that in Vortex too, especially at the end, like at the very end.
And I mean, you're
literally like a disembodied experience is what you get at the end of the movie.
And you're also literally floating around in Enter the Void.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Every time he does it differently, and it's genius every time. That's the thing too. It's never a gimmick. He understands what he's doing with it. It's pretty magnificent to watch.
Yes, we should move on. From Vortex. The next movie we have is another. Gaspar's French, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's got to be.
He's Argentinian.
Okay. Oh my bad. That's why.
Well, I think he's both. I don't remember.
Let me see.
He's Argentinian. And
he's Argentine independent filmmaker based in Paris, France. The next film is French, which is Petite Maman, which is the same director as Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which obviously got a lot of buzz when that came out a few years ago. Only two of us have seen this movie, so we're probably just going to be relatively brief with this one. Mufish and I both saw it. And Petite Maman, it follows a mother-daughter in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But centrally it follows basically a mother whose mother passed away, and they are the family, which is a mother, a father, and a daughter, are traveling to her house in France that is needs to be emptied now that I guess we call her the grandmother has passed away, and they spend some time together, and then the mother leaves, and it's just the father and the daughter is spending time in the woods and around the house, and finds ways to basically connect with her mother in ways that, and with the grandmother in ways that are unexpected and different, and it's sort of a movie about kind of generational grief.
Yep.
And emotional honesty between parents and children, and what that can do, and the tendency to hide things from our children or disclose them in interesting ways. What did you think, Mufish?
I have not seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I just missed it in 2019, and I just haven't gone back. I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's good, but
yeah, it's worth seeing if anything.
But this was my first exposure to her films. I also don't know how to say her name. Celine? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Celine Sciamma.
Celine Sciamma. Okay. Yes. Either way,
Yeah.
off the bat, I think what's really sets this movie apart from anything this year and really anything in recent memory is that I think it features two of the best child performances in a long time, unbelievably long time.
It's weirdly where that French school of acting really, I think, comes to benefit specifically child. Not to take anything away from the actors themselves, but that sort of very like unexpressive performance it works really well here with these children because they portray you can actually see underneath the surface, even though they're kids.
Yep.
It's really interesting. Oh, beautiful looking movie.
It's so beautifully shot.
It takes this house that is in the middle of these woods, these beautiful lush woods, and there's almost no score,
nice colors, no music.
Yeah, no music. It's all soundscape, sound of wind through leaves, feet going through crushing leaves,
a window
sticks
open in the house,
yes.
Hearing the breeze come in.
Yes, exactly. Just I would say an overall very warm movie, especially in the scenes with, I guess any of the scenes between characters are pretty warm. I was thinking specifically of the daughter and the dad.
Yep.
A lot of their scenes are very warm,
mm-hmm.
but also those scenes are kind of designed to sort of almost pinpoint the dad's tendency to not be honest with the daughter is sort of a thing that gets challenged a lot. Yeah, it's a movie that feels very safe, but explores a lot of very real, simple heaviness that I think that exists in families and systems.
Yep. In a nice, neat, small package, it's 72 minutes.
Yes. It's very short.
Doesn't need to be longer as well.
No, I think it's one of those movies where I think it's simple. It's specific. But it's simply specific in a way that I think anybody could read into it their own experiences if they put in the effort to do so. Yeah, that's maybe all we need to say about that one.
Yep.
Very, very well done. Next we have Kogonada's After Yang, which is his follow-up to his first film, which came out in 2017, Columbus. So it's been 5 years since he has released his first movie to releasing a second movie. And as far as I know, he hasn't done anything in between. So,
yeah, I would like to say that we have a different name for Columbus, but I won't say it in here.
This is true. This is true.
A bit of a sidebar is that Agent Cooper and I had the chance to visit Columbus, like a month ago or so.
Yes.
Mainly because of the movie, because we both really like it. Especially Agent Cooper loves it.
It's one of my favorites, yeah.
And it was very cool place.
Yes. So, After Yang was a movie that I was highly anticipating. It came out the same weekend as The Batman, so I was probably the only one who was more excited for After Yang than Batman, which is fine. But yeah. After Yang, it's a movie that I very much resonated with. It follows It's a science fiction film. I don't think it ever says what year it's from, but it's implied that it's probably a couple centuries, maybe 1 century ahead of us. Like maybe 22nd, 23rd century, I don't know. But not too distant future. And it's a world that has like different androids or whatever they call them. And there's this family that is... husband and wife that adopted a Chinese daughter, and in order to help the Chinese daughter feel connected to her culture, they get this older brother android that's designed to connect her to the culture. Like, that's specifically what this android is designed to do. It's named Yang, and then one day Yang shuts off for an unknown reason, and the dad specifically sort of has to go on a trek to kind of figure out what happened to the android. And in the process, he sees things from a new perspective as far as his relationship with his daughter, everybody's relationship to the android. Yeah, and gets kind of a new perspective on life.
Yeah, the one thing with After Yang, because I mean I liked it. It didn't like stick with me so much. Just the one thing that I had with it is, of course, Kogonada is a video essay guy, so like he would make video essays, and he comes from the long tradition of critics becoming filmmakers. But he's a video essay guy, and I'm not. I don't really like video essays.
Fair.
So I mean, it's one of those movies where you can really tell. So the guy who made it is a movie guy, and he learned his stuff from movies, and so you get like a really visual experience. Like the
yes.
So I like because of course a big part of the movie is just seeing things from different perspectives, and the big so he plays with the different different resolutions so like I watched it and I pirated a 4K copy of it, and so I don't know if this was an intentional thing or not, but I noticed that the movie, when stuff is sort of just like happening, as people talking to each other.
Yeah, I think I know what you're gonna say.
It's like it looks like a regular movie, and then when you get to the Yang perspective, where it's
lower resolution.
It's lower resolution. It's a little lower quality, which is, I mean that's how, because it's a memory. It's a recorded memory, and you aren't going to be seeing it in such high fidelity. You would see it like a home movie. So it's an interesting little thing he did with that. And I also like the way he did the calls, however those worked.
Yes. Yeah, that was really cool.
He changed the aspect ratio.
The aspect ratio.
Like square 4x5.
And it has a bit of it has some kind of almost like, it has like a filter.
He's a little fuzzy.
Yes.
So he does a lot of interesting things with the, just with playing with how the actual shot is like literally made, how it was actually done, not just how he composed it, which, I mean, he did change how he composed it, obviously. But I thought it was interesting because it's not something you see very often. Like usually if a movie does it or does anything to that, in that sort of thematic way, it'll just be like regular movie and then, like camcorder, found footage sort of thing, or,
very obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting, of course, is the other movie that came out the same day, Batman. How they did it, with a bunch of, the Riddler.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I would say, of course, you forgot to mention the opening credits.
I didn't necessarily forget to mention, but it's a feast. It's a feast for the eyes.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular.
I rewatched this movie yesterday, and I still just have a smile on my face whenever the credits come on because it's just funny. And it's funny because the very first time I watched the movie, of course I didn't notice this because I hadn't seen the movie before, but it's like it's a dance competition, and it intercuts between pretty much the families of all the characters you meet in the movie.
Oh,
like that's all the people you're intercutting through. It's either the main family or the family that it's their neighbors with George, or it's the workshop guy, the conspiracy theorist and his family, or it's the museum woman and her family. Like it just intercuts between their families during that sequence, which, of course I didn't catch it. You wouldn't catch it the first time because you're like, these are just random faces. But yeah, very fun opening. It was jarring in the theater because Columbus has nothing. I don't think Columbus gets to that decibel level.
No.
The entire movie.
It also doesn't really do any of the visual stuff that this one does. Like not in that way at all.
It doesn't play with perspective that way. It doesn't play with I think you're right, Josh. Kogonada is like a hyper visual and sound. Like he's very much a sight and sound person, 100%.
Yeah.
Like even with how he plays with perspective, like I think one of the most like noticeably interesting things he does is when he does like the different memory scenes that involve like repeating lines different ways, almost like he's playing like two different takes back to back when like somebody says something and they're remembering it, because he's playing with this idea of memory and how it's like, did it happen this way, did it happen that way, but he does it in a way that's very subtle, in a way that then contrasts Yang, who's just, well, what you see is what you get, that's what happened. So he does a lot of interesting stuff visually. He's just in contrast to Gaspar, the camera almost never moves in his movies. He likes to keep his shots very still and let things kind of play out inside of them. So you're always supposed to kind of pay attention to environment rather than just sort of, what's happening.
Yeah, that's one thing that I liked about the movie, because I've always sort of preferred very simple camera movements. I feel like whenever whenever the camera like moves, I feel like there should be like sort of deliberate sort of reason that you're moving the camera.
Yeah.
Like think like
totally.
so many movies, you'll have a stationary sort of shot, just people talking. You got to put that in your movie. And then what do you do during the shot? Oh, we just slowly zoom in. And like it's like it doesn't matter really, but it's always something I've like not really liked. It feels so like
I think it takes you out a lot of the time.
It's like
totally.
It's like half baked. Like you're not like I'm expecting some like genius sort of virtuoso with the camera for this like a movie that's just two people talking. But
yeah.
I've always thought that like if I were to do like like you think like a sort of toned down sci-fi movie.
Yeah, sort of a minimalist, sci-fi movie.
Obviously, the way I would think to do it is just very simple. Like think like how like Kubrick would do it. Was he would stage the shot, and it would be so much in how the shot is staged.
Yep.
And if you move the camera, you sort of detract from that and sort of take away from the care you've taken to put something together. Obviously, like moving the camera is like, I'm not saying don't move the camera, but he did a good job with it, where you just sort of let the scene sort of play out, how stuff is positioned in the frame. Because I've always that's just how I typically prefer a movie, because like when you have a movie like After Yang, which is designed where he comes from the video essay, every frame a painting type thing, where they try to make things look so pretty. Keeping the camera still, is the way to do it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, it's intentional. I mean, even in Columbus, Columbus has a lot of, I don't know, like quote unquote B-roll, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, it doesn't feel like B-roll.
No.
At all. Like every time he cuts to just a shot of a building, you're not like, oh. You're like, oh. Because you can tell, I mean, I would guess that Kogonada was very deliberate with every single shot in that movie, and probably in this one too.
Definitely.
You feel it 100%. And that's probably one of his biggest strengths as a filmmaker.
I also would like to add one thing I really like about this movie is, in terms of an approach to sci-fi, I think it's just really neat that it's pretty kind of understated. Like you're just plopped into a world that already exists, and you're not given a ton of information, but it's okay. You don't always need it. It's kind of like Her. I think the movie Her in terms of like world building, where you get bits and pieces of like, oh, this background has these amazing futuristic buildings, or this place has there's this incredible like vineyard garden place, or even like their home, which every shot inside their home is just unbelievable.
It's a remarkable piece of production design, and also the costume design is another thing that that and Her do really well, which is like just dress people differently, like distinctly differently.
Exactly, but it seems it doesn't seem too far-fetched or unrealistic.
Well, and it's Eastern influence. Like it's clearly like Asian influenced development in clothing, which plays into the general like themes of the movie, which are very much culture oriented.
Yep.
Which is again like a thing with this sci-fi approach, which is that it isn't really concerned with like, it's almost, I would say Kogonada put some red herring in his movie, which I'm mixed about, as far as like what is the movie about, because I don't think it's really about like those big sci-fi questions that we usually think about, like what is it, like what is, is this robot a person, or is the robots going to uprise, do we need to give them rights? Like it's none of that bullshit. It's more like it's culture oriented questions, which don't come up in science fiction very often.
No.
Which is I think Kogonada makes a strong argument for a lot of things that have not been explored in film.
Sci-fi is usually just a metaphor for those things. It's usually not discussed as explicitly as it is in this, which is pretty interesting. It's very unique in that way.
Yeah, and it's a carryover. There's a carryover from Columbus, which I think is where it's helpful to have seen Columbus before you see After Yang, as far as how Kogonada is really interested in how technology or things that are created by people, how they can be used best to serve people on an almost spiritual level of how can technology actually benefit and not detract from the human experience. And I think it's a very unique, rather than sort of a cynical whatever technology is coming for us or whatever. It's a much more positive take without being overly, sentimental or optimistic.
It's crazy that Colin Farrell had that After Yang and Batman on the same day.
He had one of the greatest weekends ever.
He is so dripped out in both of them. That's what's crazy.
He's so dripped out in both of them.
Like, it's unreal.
Colin Farrell looks so good.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yep.
Like, there's one scene in After Gang where he has his shirt off, and I'm like, God damn. Yeah, we can move on. That's Coconuts After Yang. So the next movie, it's a small film, I think, called
indie flick.
Little indie flick, starring what's this guy's name? Tom Cruise. It is Top Gun Maverick, not the first one, the second one.
Oh, we're talking about the second one?
We're talking about Sorry, did I send you the first one?
The first one came out this year.
Oh damn. Shit. So yeah, Josh might need a few minutes to get oriented.
God damn it.
Yeah, sorry. We're talking about Top Gun Maverick, the biggest film of the year, and becoming already is one of the biggest films of all time, financially speaking.
As it should be.
As it should be, if we dare say on the Ubumfa Podcast that this is a very well done film. For those of you who don't know, this is a movie that is a follow up to the 1986 hit cultural phenomenon Top Gun. It takes place basically in modern day, in the year of our Lord 2020, and it follows Tom Cruise's Pete Maverick Mitchell as he tries to cope with his place in life as an aging pilot who has refused to get promoted and who is sort of trying to find their place in the military, find their place in life, feeling kind of lost, like the threat of him being sort of a relic is creeping up on him. And then there's this new threat, this new mission that he's handpicked not to fly, but to teach the next generation of young pilots how to complete this seemingly suicide mission. And one of the pilots is the son of his former co-pilot wingman, Goose. And so there is sort of a tension there of needing to reconcile with him. So yeah, what did we like or dislike about Top Gun Maverick?
So for Top Gun, I remember this is one of the earliest COVID fatalities was Top Gun, because it was supposed to come out, I don't remember, May, March, April, sometime around then.
Yeah.
And of course it got delayed, and they kept delaying it, of course, because of Tom Cruise. Because Tom Cruise, I mean, they knew what they had there. They're not just gonna, dump it to streaming or give it a tenant release,
it wasn't going on HBO Max.
Where they're just gonna sort of shovel it off, and either in the middle of the pandemic or just slap it on a streaming service. They knew that they had, I'd say, easily the best Hollywood spectacle since Fury Road, I'd say. I feel like, unless I'm forgetting something, I think that's got to be...
it depends on how you view Fallout.
Fallout. Of course, doesn't really count because it's part of the same movie series, the Tom Cruise cinematic universe.
Part of the Tom... Oh, no.
Well, I'll say, because it's kind of funny, it's interesting just thinking about the expectations for Top Gun. Because, I mean, we knew. We knew it was going to be good.
We knew it was going to be good.
Because...
Other people did not.
You have, Tom Cruise. I've been saying for years, he's the greatest actor ever.
It's true. He's been saying it.
He's literally multifaceted, the ultimate actor. Everything you can want. He's the pinnacle of America. Of course, Joseph Kosinski, the director. He comes from, making sort of CG ads mixed with live action for video games. Or not just the ads, but also sort of little tie-in short films.
Yeah, interesting.
Of course, his first big one was Tron Legacy, which I know for me personally was one of the first movies that I saw where I was like, hey, wait a minute. Movies aren't just something, you watch. It's not just something of course, Tron Legacy has its problems, but, you have Daft Punk score and, cool world.
The direction is not the biggest problem with that movie.
Yeah.
It's the writing is really where it falters. So everything else is pretty great.
Yeah, basically, we knew. We knew coming in, you had Kosinski, you had Tom Cruise.
McQuarrie was involved.
Yeah, Christopher McQuarrie is the top of the line Hollywood spectacle guy. So we knew, and expectations from other people were like, Top Gun, man, it's been over 30 years. Tom Cruise is old. Who cares? It's gonna. I mean, people are gonna go see it. The boomers are gonna go see it.
And the trailer undersold it is also, I feel like, a really important
which
part of it.
Of course, the trailer is actually really good because it doesn't really tell you anything about it.
Yeah,
but it also doesn't.
It holds back so much.
It doesn't show any of the craziest stuff that happens because, of course, you can't put that in a trailer. It literally wouldn't work in a trailer. You have to have the relentless action of the Death Star run there. But pretty much, I mean, it was underestimated before it came out, much like Mr. Pete Maverick Mitchell.
Yeah, so true.
You can't doubt him.
No.
I mean, pretty much.
You want to. You may want to. You might want to wish it to fail, but
just to manage expectations.
And we're off.
Yeah, so basically, this is, I'd say, the best spectacle of the year.
Until Avatar 2 comes out.
Avatar 2 is going to be the only one that can contend with it. I don't think it's going to beat it as far as thrilling goes.
Yes, you're probably
correct.
Yeah,
I think there's no chance because the original Avatar wasn't very thrilling. It was more of a, wow, how cool is this?
Yeah.
But this is, the best thing about it is, it knows what it is. It knows sort of because the movie is itself, about itself. Of course, Tom Cruise is not just playing himself in every movie. It's not just a joke. He's quite literally playing himself in this movie.
Yes.
Just think of the scene with Ed Harris at the beginning. You're a dying breed. People don't want this anymore. You're going from real stuff that Tom Cruise is so good at to, more CG spectacle. Of course, it's been happening for, decades at this point.
Right. Well, and people have pointed out that this is one of the first movies, if not the first movie, where Tom Cruise has been fine being actually short, and appearing short on camera, and B, having references to his age.
Yep. He's in the vortex. He's getting old. You can't deny it.
Yeah.
Pretty much best part of the movie is, of course, how much of it is practical.
Yep.
The only CG that they used was the 5th generation fighters from Nameless Baddie Country.
Right. Yeah.
Particularly the shot. The shot where the thing just goes
perpendicular.
Where it
dodges the missiles.
Yeah, that was. I think they were flying in F-18. That was what they did, and they CG'd a guy CG'd this other model on it. So, you can't beat the practical stuff, which is what Tom Cruise brings to the table consistently now. With Mission Impossible and all this, which completely sets it apart from everything else. You guys didn't see Jurassic World Dominion, but there is a scene in it where Bryce Dallas Howard ejects from the plane they're flying, and it's just, as she's falling, it's just some of the worst green screen effects I've seen in a big budget movie, and it's obviously that there's a fan blowing in her face, and it's just so goofy, and you watch something like that coming off of Top Gun with real stunts. It's just think, because I don't know if this is coming, but they're making a Rogue Squadron Star Wars movie. Just think of how...
Isn't Patty Jenkins doing that?
Maybe, who knows at this point.
I thought so.
But just think of how high the standards are for that now. Because we've had Top Gun, this sort of air combat on
How are they going to do it in space, Josh? How are they going to do it in space?
Rogue One already had it.
Yeah, but how are you going to do it practically?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the standards for it are so high because you can't do that real. You can't do that practical. Tom Cruise is literally going to do it practical with his space movie that's coming up soon. Yeah, but you just can't beat real stunts. They're just cool. Even though you can do much crazier conceptual things when you fake it. Compare something like The Raid to a Marvel movie. Even though those Marvel movies, those guys are so much more powerful than the kickboxers in The Raid. They've got energy missiles and stuff. Just compare it to
whatever Scarlet Witch has.
Compare it to those dudes just fighting, in their whatever it is, Indonesian martial arts. even though the scales are so much smaller, it doesn't matter because it's actually real. You're seeing people actually do things.
I mean, yeah, even in Fallout, again, Tom Cruise, like the bathroom scene, like every punch matters. You feel everything.
Yep, that's just
the way you got to do it.
That's just what's missing from Hollywood, and of course, it's only going to get worse.
Yep.
Well, yeah, because it's. I'm assuming astronomically cheap. I don't know actually. I'm assuming it's in the end it's cheaper to do it through visual effects as well. That's why they do it. It increases their profits, their profit margin, because it's cheaper to do it digitally, and then you make a lot of money because people are going to get their asses in seats for the garbage anyway.
Yeah, because you can only hope that studios will see Top Gun and see how much money it's making and think, well, hey, wait a minute, actual real, good spectacle might sell a little bit more tickets. Like, imagine if Top Gun was all CG,
Oh my, I don't want to think about it.
It's like you could make it good, you could still make it fun, but the weight of Top Gun relies on the fact that, they're actually flying these planes. They're actually, like, zooming through these mountains and, turning and burning.
Dirt and bird.
And one thing also, might as well bring up sort of who's the bad guy in this. Because when watching for the first time when I saw it, they referred to it as a uranium depot, but I was not the only one who misheard that as Iranian. So I thought the whole time they're like,
you thought it was Iran? Oh god.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I heard them just say the enemy and uranium, and I knew that going in that people said that it was a faceless enemy, but I heard them say Iranian, and it made perfect sense because, like, Iran and their uranium depots. That's something that's in the news.
Yeah. Right.
But of course, there's nowhere in Iran that looks like that.
No,
certainly not.
There's mountains in Iran, but not of that variety. Directly by the ocean.
No.
So it's just it's an amalgam of Iran and Russia.
Yep. Insert. Yeah. I mean, the real antagonist of Top Gun Maverick is, of course, time itself.
Yep.
It's the true enemy, the true faceless villain of this film.
The time you got to get the bomb out, and eventually, these pilots are going to be useless, and their skills are no longer going to be needed. Much like,
and this is his last chance to reconnect with Rooster before it's too late.
Yep. So I mean, it's just like just from like top to bottom, it's just all around solid little movie. Not a little movie. But,
you get the Lady Gaga song at the end. Get the 40-year-olds crying.
Which was, that was a perfect pick for how.
It was a perfect pick
because you obviously have all the Top Gun music and the '80s sound still, playing. Because you can't do Top Gun without Top Gun.
Nope.
But you think who's the equivalent today? And that would be Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I think I heard that it was supposed to be 21 Pilots.
Or were they supposed to? Were they supposed to do the Gaga song, or were they supposed to do the One Republic song, or whoever it was?
Oh,
I have no idea.
I think it was the Lady Gaga song, and I think it was Tom Cruise fired them.
Fired 21 Pilots.
Yeah, he made a good choice.
Because that's a total like stupid studio move. Oh, the movie's about pilots. What's a band?
That's the craziest part. Well, yeah, because like I don't know. This is not to offend any 21 Pilots fans. I know you're a strong and vibrant community, but 21 Pilots isn't exactly in the cultural zeitgeist the way they were, I don't know, 7 years ago.
Yeah, not among the people who are interested in a new Top Gun movie.
Yeah. No. It's like the people who get mad at every Super Bowl halftime show when it's the weekend or something. It's like, who's that?
Yep.
But yeah, Top Gun is good stuff. It's one of those movies where it's like you can't really overhype it, unless you try and say that it's like, I don't know, the most like intricate full package Inception level movie ever, but it's not that, which is fine.
Yeah, and
thank goodness it isn't.
That's the McQuarrie effect, is he knows how to make, not just a great spectacle, but tie it in with a good story, good characters. It's nothing like amazingly deep, but it's just solid characters that play off of each other well. So even when it's not, even when you're not getting the high flying action, you still get, banter that could have totally been horrible. It could have very easily just been like, oh, I don't give a shit about these guys talking to each other. I want to see planes.
I want to see them in the planes. Yeah, exactly.
It's like the whole thing is just, really well done.
Yeah, and I think it's I think it might be potentially a turning point in the way people have been, because I think the movie's cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, it's got that 80s cheese in the dialogue and in the story. But even young people don't care. The way, like, I think cheese, was something of the past, from died in the early 2000s. Because now people want, their Marvel dialogue that's all really funny and, quippy and whatever, sleek. They don't want cheese. But everybody nobody is complaining about, I think people like it. People liked the cheesiness and the old school, unapologetically, 80s approach.
Yeah, it's just like earnest.
Which is encouraging.
It's like they don't do the Marvel, let's undercut this serious moment with a little joke.
Or, let's laugh at how ridiculous what's happening is.
Yeah, or, because there's not a single nice little emotional moment in any Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just not there. That's not what people want from a Marvel movie.
Yes.
You can't end a Marvel movie, with, after the mission is over, just a bunch of dudes like shaking hands and going like, yeah, or like not even like saying anything. They're just like,
did it.
They're just like shaking hands. I like to say I like the sort of character arcs everyone goes on. Of course, not some people don't really go on character arcs, but Hangman has a really classic arc that I think any other you could have very easily just given him his comeuppance for being, he's a sexist pig, and he gets no redemption. They could have blown him up. They could have either blown him up or just not brought him back. I think it's kind of funny in Top Gun Maverick that he makes those like sexist jokes. He receives no comeuppance for it. They Bob sneers at him, but in the end he's the hero. He saves the day. Without him, Goose or Rooster and Maverick are dead. Yeah. It's just kind of like, it's just sort of a classic sort of like, there's no need to like take some guy who did some bad things or said some, mean things.
Do some virtue signaling, like, oh, this is wrong, audience.
Yeah, you don't need to like do this sort of like scolding punishment for him. He just gets redeemed in the end by being a hero, by being a courageous hero, which is something that you wouldn't get in other movies nowadays, because I think they would sort of like be afraid to do something like that. They wouldn't. Yeah. Because you can't just sort of like, I mean, just think like in real life, people who are like mean guys who do, who are like, they're dicks or they say mean things to other people. They don't get their like comeuppance in that way, and if they're ever redeemed, it's usually because they do something else to redeem themselves. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, Hangman's like a hero. He's not a perfect guy, but he's a hero.
Nope.
Which also one thing I'd like to say is that was like a perfect casting. Like, he played that
Glenn Powell is incredible. Yeah, no, he plays it perfectly. And literally my only complaint with the movie is that he should have just smooched Rooster at the end. Only it would have tied the whole movie together, the whole franchise together, really, with the original Top Gun being wonderfully homoerotic. It would have just been a good moment, but it's fine. Yeah. But yeah, we should move on. The next film is also a high octane action thriller
that nobody saw
from a seasoned director, a veteran of the action scene, who has come to bring us nothing less than their magnum opus.
Yes, Jurassic World Dominion.
Yeah, Rabbo was the only one who saw it, so they're just going to talk about it for 15 minutes.
Yeah, anyway, here's my thoughts on Jurassic World Dominion. It's bad. All right, move on.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yep.
I haven't seen it, but I'm going to say it's bad.
Yeah, you know.
Same.
It's so what we are actually going to talk about is a not bad movie, and it's called Ambulance.
We don't stop.
We don't stop. It's an iconic film already, as you can tell. It stars Jake Gyllenhaal and
Abdul-Mateen, is that his name?
Is that it?
Yep.
Is that his name? Perfect. Yeah, he's been in a lot of good stuff I've seen. I mean, he was an Aquaman for one.
Matrix.
In the Matrix, that's right. And yeah, it stars the two of them, and it is about two brothers, who one of which seems to be a career criminal of sorts, and the other who is sort of has a history in the military, and is now trying to get by, but is in financial trouble. And basically, the criminal brother, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, wraps him up into this huge heist that goes kind of wrong, where they end up hijacking an ambulance throughout the streets of L.A. with an injured cop inside, so they can have a hostage, and they are trying to get away with the money, so that everybody can sort of have a happy ending. And the police are chasing them throughout the streets of L.A. And it's insane. It's an insane movie. It has some of the most unique camera work I've seen in an action film.
This movie is the polar opposite to After Yang.
Yeah.
it literally is.
Yeah.
It is only united by its themes of family.
It's also kind of funny how we were just talking about how we were like, oh well, maybe not move the camera too much and all that.
Have a reason for it.
Yeah, Ambulance is the perfect the perfect sort of this example of moving the camera with purpose. Even though of course you get all those little B-roll shots where it's like a drone. It's flying way up a skyscraper and it goes way down and then it whips to the left and immediately cuts to a stationary shot. It's like
it's whiplash. It breaks you. It breaks your brain.
It's just it's like it's just a shame that this bombed because
it really is.
I was shocked it bombed.
Me too.
Like I mean I wasn't expecting it to like be a hit, but
people would like it.
They would literally like it. Like, you got Jake Gyllenhaal going crazy, which I had absolutely no idea that's what we were going to get from Jake Gyllenhaal.
Something that over the top. Yeah.
Because I knew going in we were going to get, a classic Michael Bay. Like I was saying before it came out, I was like, Michael Bay has one good movie every 10 years, and I have the feeling that this is going to be that movie. And it was. But going in, all I knew was, they hijack an ambulance, so it's like a car chase the whole movie.
Yeah. And
there's a bunch of interesting drone shots. That's all I knew going in.
Yeah.
But just think of that early in the movie when, you make it like if this was like a Fast and Furious movie, or like it was directed by a Fast and Furious director, or any other sort of generic action movie guy. Just think of the scene where Jake Gyllenhaal is trying to convince Yahya Abdul-Mateen to join him on this heist. And they're standing in their like car dealership or whatever it is. And any other one, they would have just been, it's an action movie, so it's going to be shot, reverse shot, but the camera's going to be shaking. And that's how it would be. But in this one, it was like spinning around them the entire time.
It was literally spinning around
and it would not stop.
And it would like reverse like directions which way the camera was spinning.
Yeah, it would just like stop. And like Gyllenhaal is doing the absolute craziest like improv the whole time. Like he's just saying some random crazy stuff.
And it's just sometimes it just seems like he's talking to himself. Like it's like he's alone in a room and he's just going crazy.
This is Kashmir.
It's Kashmir.
The interesting thing with the movie, I was mainly just expecting some good action, and some filler from the characters, but it is similar to Top Gun Maverick in that a lot of the, it's just sort of played so straight and so like earnest, sort of like the brotherhood between these like two adopted brothers, because one of them's white, one of them's black, so they're a little different, but they're brothers at heart because they grew up together. Yahya was brought in from the streets by their criminal father, and it's. Of course, you can't talk about this movie without comparing it to Heat, which is
This is true.
Clearly its biggest, at least story-wise, its biggest influence. And of course, it is literally Michael Mann's Heat, because it's his love letter to L.A., pretty much.
Yes.
Yep.
So you have
literally
all these...
LA porn.
You just have all these different, like, storylines, going on. Like, it's not as intricate as Heat is.
No.
But it's just played, like, earnestly. And I wasn't expecting to, like, at the end of the movie, be like, oh, hey, that was, like, I actually do kind of care about these characters.
Yes.
You know, like, they get to the end, and I'm like, it's like, well, I mean, that is what it is. You got these two guys, grew up together, had their fight, and then they come back together. And it's just the whole interrelatedness of people who've known each other their entire lives who, hate each other and love each other at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, and there's complexity to the relationship. Like there's scenes where it's like, where they're trying to sort of convince the good brother to kind of turn on his brother because they're trying to kind of play on the fact that he's actually like somebody with a conscience.
Yep.
Which is, again, like it's character-oriented writing for these characters. And you're kind of wondering, is he actually going to do it, or is he going to stick with it? What's going to happen? Yeah, because you have actual tension, like real tension, that feels like it matters when it's actually based on who the characters are, rather than just being like chess pieces that you just move around however you want.
And of course, the whatever her name was, the EMT,
yes.
She had her own, plot line of her
Isaac Gonzalez.
Yeah, Isaac Gonzalez, who I thought for a while was the same girl from Morbius. It was not.
Too, but no.
But anyway, she has her plot of, she's in her work. She does her work because at the beginning of the movie, the surprisingly brutal, accident that happened to the little girl.
Oh yeah.
And she saves the little girl, and while she's saving her, she's like, "What's your name?" Being really really nice with him or with her. Then after that, like she doesn't think about it at all. Like she's not going to think about that person because it's it's a job.
Yep, exactly.
Of course, parallel to Heat there,
yeah.
Where De Niro's character is so into the job, it's just a job to him. The effects that it has on other people, is you can't really think about it in order to do your job right.
Yep.
So it's not like anything that's never been done before. And it's not like it's did it anything way better, but it's very similar to Top Gun, in just the way it takes these basic stories we've seen before and just does them right, so that it's not like a drag on the good action, which is it's got to be second best of the year, third best of the year. I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
We already talked about the Batman in another podcast. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about.
No.
I thought you were talking about
you know what I'm talking about.
The Batman's also there, but I know what you're talking about.
Because I would say, I would put Ambulance. I would give the edge of Ambulance to Batman. Oh, I would put Ambulance over Batman as far as the action goes.
Yeah, I get that.
Because I mean, Batman has good action, but it's more for Batman. It's more of how it was shot. That's so good.
Yeah.
Whereas an Ambulance,
you don't really care about. Yeah.
An Ambulance, they're driving through like parking garages.
Yeah.
And there's just like boxes that they just keep running into.
And like cars, cars driving off of like roadsides and just crazy.
And it's interesting, and it's interesting with Ambulance. It takes a while for the first like big Michael Bay-ism to even happen in the movie. Yeah. Like he holds back for like the first like 30 minutes at least of the movie before, if not more.
Yep.
Before like some big explosion or a car crashes through a building or something. Like it takes a while. So you can tell there is actually, weirdly enough, like some level of restraint that he's put in, intentionality that he's putting into it. Not to say that he doesn't normally do that, but
yeah. Of course, the main or the first heist in the movie, or the heist that sets it up, is very much like Heat.
It's Heat.
It's literally the heist from Heat, where they have such a plan. They do the plan, it goes according to plan, and then one of the guys gets greedy and screws it up, and you have to deal with the fallout from that. Another movie, recent movie, I don't know if either of you saw it, Triple Frontier.
I did see Triple Frontier.
Went way under the radar.
Yeah.
It was
a Netflix original, I think.
Yeah, it's a very very similar sort of. As a movie, it's very it fits in the same category that I would put like Maverick and Ambulance in, as movies where you have good action, but the story does not weigh it down. It's you very easily could have, but you have a good story, nothing game changing. But it's like something that I feel like is so rare. Like nowadays, you just don't get it. Like ever since Michael Mann has been sort of reduced in his output, you don't get those action movies with actual good stories.
It's true.
Which was not expecting from Ambulance, but it is what we got.
No, me neither. But it is what we got, and that's a good spot to transition into our next movie that just also happens to be a movie that seems like it was made by somebody who was on coke, and that is Elvis, Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. We finally getting the modern Elvis biopic. It was inevitable. It was coming. We knew it was coming. And I don't know about you, but I am very glad that we got it from the person that we did.
Oh, yes.
At such a time as this.
Baz Luhrmann was onto something special.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, Elvis was a famous... this is for you. This was a famous musician and also actor.
He was a musician.
He was a musician, but he also acted.
Oh, I thought he was a guy who shook his meat.
Yeah. And after seeing this movie, I could see where you would get that from.
Yep.
But he actually primarily made music and became very, very popular, especially with the ladies of the time. For precisely maybe the reason that, not to say that they didn't enjoy the music, because I'm sure they did.
It was the meat. It
was seeing him live was maybe really what you wanted. He was the ultimate live performer.
I would put Elvis as the live performer that obviously I'm never going to see.
Yeah.
But, the one that, like, if I could go back in time.
If you could see anybody live, yeah.
It has to be Elvis.
That's fair. And I think Baz really puts a lot of effort into making sure that we feel that way. The movie just follows his life from when he was a kid to when he inevitably dies. And following his career, his relationship with the person that just sort of discovered him and promoted him for the first time and managed him. The Colonel?
Colonel Tom Parker.
Colonel Tom Parker, played by America's dad, Tom Hanks. And
fascinating performance.
Which people have now come to debate what the true effects of COVID on the mind are. Since this performance has come out, because it's fascinating. It's a fascinating performance by Tom Hanks in the supporting role.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is, I'm no Elvis history expert, but the whole thing with Colonel Tom Parker is that it was a shock that he was European.
Yeah.
Like the whole time he's like speaking like this, like.
We are two lost children.
he
lost lonely children reaching for infinity.
He was Dutch, which, if you know anything about Dutch people, you don't really... It's no shocker that he's Dutch. I won't elaborate on that. But the interesting thing with the movie, too, is it's one of those situations where when Tom Parker... whenever he's like, I built Elvis, I made Elvis, without me, there would be no Elvis. That is kind of true,
Yeah.
Like, not only did he discover him, but he was the one sort of pushing him around, getting these deals and all that.
Yep. No, totally.
So it's one of those, like, sort of sticky situations where you have someone who's clearly, domineering over, an artist, and does actually help to get the artist out there, even though they're, making money, working him to the bone. And, Elvis wanted to tour the world, but, Tom Parker's like, no, we can't do that because they'll find out.
Yeah.
That I'm foreign.
Yeah.
And the movie, one thing I'll say is the movie does a pretty good job of, obviously it's represents the Colonel in a bad light, because he wasn't really a good guy.
No.
But it is it never outright says like, oh, he was a shit person who wasn't responsible at all for Elvis.
I mean, he's portrayed as the villain, but also he is portrayed empathetically, I feel like, or sympathetically.
Plenty of the time.
Like, you get to see him pretty vulnerable and raw, but also manipulative and domineering to an extreme. And then, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, like, whoa, it's crazy how Elvis portrays its antagonist, quote unquote, like, in a complex light, when, I mean, it's just a pretty realistic way to portray somebody in that position. Somebody who did build this person's career, but then proceeded to use it and abuse it. It's both and so it's like, I mean, that's what we're getting a lot of that nowadays. Not to go into it, obviously, as far as like historical sort of redactions and trying to reinterpret history and say, well, this person was actually a shit guy, and so we shouldn't, honor their achievements. And it's like, well, it's not that simple, as much as we would like to make it. And Baz resists that temptation. So I think he does get both pretty well, and he gets that with Elvis himself, somebody who meant well, and who did their best most of the time, but also was in a position of fame and power that no one else maybe ever has had.
Yep.
And made some suspicious mistakes as a result.
One thing is, so it's sort of one of those movies where the main character, of course Elvis, is not like a perfect guy, but the movie itself mostly shows him as sort of a great guy. And you get these slight little hints sort of throughout the movie of sort of like his negative character. Like, I'm trying to think of other examples, but I can't. But pretty much, there's, when you have a movie that's about a guy, and there's very slight sort of hints towards his like, less than positive characteristics.
Yep.
Like, obviously in the movie, I mean, it makes a point about his, abandonment and lack of presence around his daughter.
Yeah.
But the movie sort of plays into the whole sort of spectacle thing of it, where you're so caught up in the spectacle yourself that you don't really think about that. You get the hints. And it's not even necessarily that you get the hints, but they're literally like, they're not even hints. They're just there, but they're still just like sort of bulldozed past. In service of the craziness of Baz Luhrmann.
I think that you could almost say that's intentional as far as the character of Elvis himself, right? As far as him getting caught up in the spectacle and not wanting to get pulled out of it for his wife or for his daughter, making the most of this thing, as he says it. And it's like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, it's hard to like imagine what it's like to be in a position like that and to say, oh, I wouldn't have done that. It's like, well, it's hard to say. Can you really criticize Elvis for wanting to fully indulge in what he had going for him in that time?
Yep. The one thing I'll say about this movie, it's starting to change the way people look at Elvis, because a lot of young people sort of look at Elvis as kind of a novelty, like he was, that was a thing that people liked in like the 50s and 60s.
People dress up as him in Vegas. Yeah.
But now people are sort of coming around to the fact that he's one of the greatest musicians of all time. Like he's the best-selling musician of all time.
Right.
And you wouldn't really know that if you look at like sort of how he's perceived, at least by the younger generation, because older people know. Because Elvis was the most famous man in the world up until he died.
Yes.
So like they knew, but younger people don't, because what he did to get rock and roll and the black music onto the top, into the radio, he was the one who was able to do that, to bridge that gap. Because at the end of the day, then you needed a white guy to make that gap. You couldn't have brought like a black musician and just put him out there.
It's another nuance of his character.
They talk about that in the movie.
Yeah, and it's a huge point of the movie. It's one of those things. Even in the movie, they don't really ever criticize Elvis. It's something that Elvis is sort of criticized for today.
Yes,
as like,
for appropriating.
But the thing is even then he didn't.
He did not no.
They, even in the movie, obviously, like, he talks about how, like, oh, I prefer, the company of the black musicians. I prefer, going to the bars in, like, the black part of the town and all that. And that's, like, that is how he was. He would talk about it all the time, how he was singing music, written and performed originally by black people. It's nowadays people sort of look back at that and be like, oh, like he did black music and we got so popular with black music. But like, you couldn't just have like a black guy just do that and become Elvis. Like at the time, that just something was not in the cards.
No.
So
and the movie does make that point, I think, multiple times explicitly. Like as far as I think people might think like, oh, the scenes with whether it's B.B. King or with Dr. King getting shot or with Bobby Kennedy. Like I don't think those were designed to be like these neutral political events so much as they were designed to be events that were important and shocking to
Elvis himself,
Elvis himself, and to the black community.
Yeah,
because I think people don't think of Bobby Kennedy as somebody who was necessarily important to the black community, but I think he was.
Absolutely.
As far as a political figure that actually gave a shit about them.
I was gonna say, compared to the alternative.
So when you get that scene where it's like, it is a tragedy, but it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with us. It's it's like that's supposed to be Elvis like fighting for, like saying we can't just like profit off of a whole people group's music and then kick him to the curb.
Yeah.
It needs to be, they say, oh, he did that one performance that was explicitly political because he sang a political song. Like all of his music was supposed to be in some way political, I suppose, in that respect.
His performances were all political. Everything he was doing was political, at least a little bit.
He was like, Elvis was the embodiment of rock and roll. What is rock and roll? But sort of like the liberating music of just rocking out, and that's
shaking your shmeat.
And that was a huge part. When he defeated racism in the 1960s, that was a huge part of it. Was the rock and roll of Elvis Presley. He's like, oh, those guys, they can make some music.
Yeah.
And then also, you got to talk about pretty decent performance by Austin Butler.
Yeah. I think it's very good.
To say the least.
I would say it's. It's up there for the year. I would say so far.
It's got to be number one at least now.
Yeah, so far. You gotta give it to him. It's like, I don't know if either of you've seen the clip that they released before the movie, where it was just him singing in like a sort of sound test where he was singing Elvis.
It's pretty. It's pretty unreal.
And it's like
I read that the first song that he sings, it's him singing.
So yeah, the young Elvis, like when he's sort of young, those are Austin Butler singing, and they use actual recordings of Elvis for the later ones.
Yeah,
but
because you would be able to tell.
Yeah,
and with those, because those are iconic.
Yeah,
it's a rare example of a performance of such a like big status figure, where they're being in a biopic, and the people who knew him and are like related to him, like literally his wife and his daughter, were like, oh yeah, that's Elvis. Like that, there he is.
He embodied him. Yeah, completely.
So, I'd say it's got to be, at least for me, I don't watch very many musical biopics, but it's got to be the best one that I've ever seen. It's miles above Bohemian Rhapsody.
I was trying to... you saw Andrew, you saw Rocket Man.
It's better than Rocket Man. Rocket Man is good, but this is way better.
Yeah.
Way more entertaining in every way.
Yeah, the music is great.
It's wild that Austin Butler was Zoe's boyfriend in Zoe 101, and now he's Elvis.
It's just a ridiculous it's just a jump to superstardom that I feel like we just haven't. We don't see that way.
Well, and he earned it.
Yeah, no. So good for Austin Butler. We're happy for him. Everybody here.
What's next?
Another thing, actually, I would like to say is, I don't know if this is the deliberate thing that Baz Luhrmann does, but watching Moulin Rouge and Elvis, like the movies are so crazy, and I don't know if I just get used to it, but it feels like they're crazier in the beginning than at the end. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell if I'm literally just getting used to the style, or if
that seems to be a pretty common. I think most people have noted that like the first 30 minutes of Elvis are like manic, and then I mean everybody I feel like noticed that at the end it just kind of peters out.
Yeah, and then he does the last little bit where he goes crazy again.
Yeah.
One thing I can say about Elvis is I don't think it needed to be that long.
No, that's I think all of our main complaint with the
biggest
movie.
Complaint.
It's like
it dragged on.
There was never a moment where I was like, this doesn't need to be in here, but it was.
Yeah.
It could have been trimmed down, which might make it a little bit more conducive to like watching it again, because I have like no inclination to watch it again, even though, seeing some of those concerts and performances again would be cool, but I've got no desire really to watch another 2.5 hour. 40-minute movie of that.
It's weirdly it's a movie. It's weirdly a movie I feel like I would be okay with putting on in the background.
Yeah.
Like at a party or something, or like I don't know, or like at a movie night I would put it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those movies where I think especially I have tended to be critical of sort of the whatever cradle to grave type biopics like Elvis, and I think usually it's because the endings are always so boring. Like I think that's the thing is the ending of the movie tends to drag on in ways that. You get to parts of the movie where it's like, oh, we've seen this story beat before in a biopic.
Yeah, it's like
it stops feeling original.
It's like get to the final performance. Like that's what we want to see.
Yeah, exactly. We all clearly very much enjoyed Elvis. It's still in theaters as of right now. So, also I went to a 50s diner the other day, and it had the poster for Elvis hanging.
The new one, like for this movie.
Yes, for this movie.
That's funny.
I wanted to take a picture of it, but it was like over. It was like hanging over a booth that had people in it. I didn't want to like pull out my phone camera and like snap.
That's every 50s diner patron's Black Panther is this movie.
Yeah, exactly. You heard it here first.
Yep.
Actually, we're going from high octane movie to high octane movie here, because the next movie on our list here is
Rise, Roar, Revolt.
Rise, Roar, Revolt. Our yeah. I was the last one to get hip to this.
It took a minute,
but it took a minute, but I got there. I got there, and I had a great time.
I'd like to add that I saw it twice in the theater. I saw it when it on its original run, and then I saw it for the encore.
Yep. Yes, Andrew has the cred for having actually purchased tickets for this film
twice. 6 hours of RRR in the theater, 2 different theaters.
Yes, RRR is a 3-hour epic in the early 1900s, correct?
The 20s.
During the 20s. They're of course during a period of British Empire occupation of India and control politically, and it's about 2 people who are on opposing sides that start a unlikely friendship that is built on some secrets, and their friendship blooms and blossoms. This unexpected friendship. They end up battling against the imperial rule, but also battling some battles between each other in the end. And there's romance, and there's action,
there's everything.
There's triumph. There's moments where you cry and you laugh. There's dance and musical numbers. It's got it all.
I'd like to say that off the bat, that Ram and Beam, they're 2 real ones. They're 2 of the realest ones ever put on the screen. Like they're boys for life. You buy it right away, and they just add on to it and add on to it.
Their chemistry is instantaneous.
It's really unbelievable, and I mean these are 2 of the biggest actors in Telugu cinema, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, and it's their first movie together, so it was a really big deal, as well as Rajamouli making the movie because he's a huge name and has had lots of success with his other movies. But this one's really unique, as in it kind of really blew up in the United States, which is, to this degree, I believe, is a first.
Yeah, it's never happened with any sort of Indian movie.
Yeah, not like this. And so many people are seeing this movie. So many people I know that I never thought would watch a movie like this have seen it and love it. I don't know anybody who hasn't loved it. I think it's maybe the best movie ever made about colonialism. I think it's arguable. I think the way it presents it, I mean, for one, man, you hate the fucking British.
Yeah, and this, at least this specific context of colonialism, yes.
Yes.
I can't name that many on the top of my head. I'd have to think about it.
It's a movie that's 3 hours, and I feel like we talked about it in I Know the Batman podcast. We've talked about it about Elvis, about some movies in here. It is a movie that's 3 hours and 8 minutes long, which on paper that's terrifying to me. That's just like, oh my gosh, what are they gonna do for over 3 hours? And this is a movie where not a second is wasted.
Nope.
It all needs to be there, and it's all entertaining in so many different ways the whole time. The action, of course, is the big thing. That's what I kind of messed up on, which is funny because this is my favorite movie of the year. I thought that Radbot was talking about the Batman, but this is definitely the one. I mean, I think everybody at this point has probably seen the gif of like all of the animals, like the tiger coming out of the cage.
Yeah.
It's just
literally a jaw-dropping moment.
And this is an instance where there's a lot of CG, which is funny because we talked about that at length when we talked about Maverick. But this is a movie where, I mean, for one, it has to be CG.
Yeah, you can't do that practical.
Most of it you can't, and especially being, an Indian movie, things are different with laws and the culture with animals. All of it's CG, but it all looks so incredible.
Well, it speaks to just a fundamentally different approach to film than what we see to action filmmaking specifically than what we see in the U.S. Whereas the U.S. is so devoted to like realism, like hyper realism and groundedness,
where this is not.
Yeah, and things have to kind of rationally make sense how things are happening and the way they look and feel, like it has to obey science or whatever. And all that, and it's obsessed with that. It's actually similar, I think, to what we see in the difference between animation between the East and West, where like in Western animation we have like Pixar, very like focused on making things look as real and feel as real as possible, but whereas like something like anime is much more like flowy, like how does it feel, what is the flow of it. And that's, I think, what we see in the action with RRR is just this like, does the tiger look 100% real? Like, no, but also like it feels real in the moment. You don't question it because it feels right. It flows correctly. The action all flows in ways that feel good, which speaks to the quality of the choreography and the effects and all of that. The actors, of course.
I mean, you're in for a treat when your introduction to Beam is him, pouring blood on himself to be chased by, is it a wolf?
He has a wolf, and
a
it's
wolf
replaced by a
first.
tiger.
And then a tiger shows up and chases him, and like he's in quite the conundrum.
She sure is.
Has to get himself out of it, and it's just off rip, just relentless, just unbelievable.
Yep. Yes.
And the first scene of the movie, again, both character introductions with.
I like his I like the first introduction more, the one where he literally has to fight through an entire crowd.
Literally unbelievable. Just beating up so many dudes.
He gets a 300 moment where he pushes all the people off the edge of the cliff.
Yep. And the movie starts with the British, like King, was it King George?
Was it the governor at the time? I don't remember.
Was it the governor?
Yeah, it was the governor, I think.
Yeah, it was the governor.
Yeah.
Taking the child from the village.
Yes.
And the mother gets bashed on the head with a big branch, and
boy does she.
I mean, off the bat, you're introduced to these three major components in the just most unbelievable ways possible. Yep. And the thing is, it doesn't let up. It just gets crazier. And
then there's some romance and some comedy. The film is funny a lot of the time. It's got some good jokes, some good romance.
The music is amazing.
Sprinkled in there. The music is great. I've said that my favorite scene in the movie is the Natu Natu dance sequence.
Yep.
It is
iconic.
It's funny. It's iconic. It's well choreographed. It's entertaining. Yes, it is.
It's also an instance of a movie that it could never be made in America. It's a movie that's built on, thousands of years of culture.
Yeah.
An approach just so fundamentally different. And that's so much of why it's so good and interesting. And I mean, especially, and I think I can really speak for all of us here, that none of us are really super well versed in Indian cinema, Telugu cinema, Bollywood, any of that, unfortunately.
Yep.
But I mean, this definitely has me wanting to watch more. That's for sure.
Yeah, what the cool thing with like RRR sort of is like, you know, in like a sort of like just compare it to a Marvel movie because you're gonna have to. You think in like a Marvel movie, stuff always happens. Like there's a reason. It's like, you know, this has to happen because we gotta make like a plot. We gotta tie this into like, you know, this character and this sort of established thing. Whereas in RRR, it's like they just sort of had these like set pieces and these like just ideas and like shit just happens. You know, was there any reason for like they don't even ever bother to make sort of some of the stuff like believable? Like
kicking a like motorcycle up and like picking it up and like throwing it at somebody.
Yeah, and like also like if this were to happen in like real life, if these two guys were to meet each other in real life, I think like pretty quickly they're gonna figure out sort of what they're both after. You know, like like Ram is gonna pretty quickly realize that Beam is the guy he's trying to find, and Beam is also gonna figure out that Ram works for the police. I shouldn't trust him. So it's like a sort of like more of a classic story where people didn't really care about that. Like it's obviously a story where stuff like that, you know, it's a plot hole. Like you can't. It's a plot hole in this movie. Like they would know.
I can no longer suspend my disbelief for this. This is going too far.
So like they just kind of like it sort of ties in sort of with how like a lot of like myths are, like stories and like myth are, where it's not like a literal story or recollection of like something that actually happened. It's like obviously if these guys were real, they would like figure it out and they wouldn't be like buddies until like the very end and like then be like, wait, what? You betrayed me? Like it wouldn't happen that way, which is something that's like not present in American movies anymore because we've had that for like so long, and like audiences were like, where's the story?
Yeah. Or we want realism. We want things to be like real life, which is fine for some movies, but it's obnoxiously taxing and detrimental to like an action movie, a spectacle.
Yeah, and it's also it does have the thing in a lot of action movies where when you have to beat up a bunch of guys, the guys just kind of like stand there, which in an American movie where you're sort of expecting the kind of realism or the heightened realism that you get in like a Marvel movie, if you see that in a movie, you'd be like, oh, come on, like
bad.
Like it's obvious, like the only movies in America that do a decent job with it is maybe like John Wick, you know, where he like takes them down one by one, and like there's a deliberate sort of reason to that.
Well,
but in RRR, you know, well, they're literally like embodiments of, you know, the gods, which you reveal at the end. It doesn't matter that like these like British soldiers are like terrible at actually like fighting them, because it's not really about like, can he beat them? Is he able to beat them? It's like, no, he's gonna beat them. It's more in like just how bonkers it is.
How is he gonna do it?
Like, how is he gonna do it?
Yes.
You know, he's gonna ride piggyback on his buddy, and he's gonna hold two like muskets, and they're gonna like spin around and shoot him.
It's just the reality that like basically like it's not all this person's fault, but it's like CinemaSins is like the embodiment of modern American way of looking at movies, which is, does the plot make sense? Is it, you know, scientifically accurate, or are people just standing there in the background when they should be attacking this person? Like,
it's just like overly analytical and critiquing everything. It's like going to the movies wanting to critique and hate and overanalyze. It's like, why? What a waste.
Like, the worst part too with that sort of nitpicking is like, you can, if you're like a nitpicker, you can nitpick and get something out of the nitpicking if you're sort of thinking about like the thing as like, or the movie as an actual thing that was made. Like if you nitpick something in a movie, you should be nitpicking stuff like they didn't really do this shot perfectly right. They could have sort of
the production of it. Yes.
Which is funny because I very briefly we talked about this, not in a podcast, but I was talking about how I feel like maybe I haven't noticed it in other years, but RRR and Elvis both have two shots that are like characters where the camera is literally just out of focus, and it's just unbelievable. It like makes more sense in older movies.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for one, that a lot of the technology was newer, and two, like they're shooting on film.
Yeah.
And
only so many things.
No, there's no autofocus. I mean, not that we're using autofocus in motion picture, because we're not.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys get what I'm saying.
No, totally.
But it's like, I'm not gonna go home and or go wherever, and they're like, "Oh, how was RRR?" And I'm gonna be like, "Oh, it was really good, but they missed the focus in one shot."
Yeah.
It's like, man, what a waste of time and energy. I guess I am mentioning it, but I'm mentioning it to say that it's not something that people need to go looking for. It's one of those just small things. People are so analytical about these things, and it's kind of ridiculous.
Yep. And they nitpick the end product, not as like a thing that was made, but they nitpick like the plot and like the characters. I mean, it's like they're not real. Like the characters are not real. So like you nitpick their motivations. It's like you're forgetting that they're like fake. Like they're not real. Like obviously like they'll know that they're not real characters, but like you like nitpick like why doesn't Beam understand like English? He's like a superhero, but why doesn't he know English? Like
Yeah.
It just like doesn't
matter.
Who
cares?
Why is Jake Gyllenhaal push his brother around so much? He's such a bad guy. I didn't like it because he was so mean.
Why did he do that? So like, the only thing, it's not really a nitpick of RR, but it's the only thing that I didn't really like too much about it was I thought the slow-mo in the action scenes was a little excessive.
I noticed that as well. It made me think of the Snyder Cut immediately as I was watching it.
Like, there's obviously, like, a lot of the shots are, like, you have to go slow-mo, like, when the tiger jumps right over him, or, like, when they release them all. But, like, there was so many, like, action scenes, which could have been, like, crazy, but he kept slowing it down. And it was, like, if they had kept up the pace in the scenes and not, like, slowed everything down so much, it could have just been, like, a lot more, like, high-octane. Like, you compare it to something like Ambulance, which is absolutely, like, frenetic, whereas RRR... Yep. Of course, RRR is it's even though it is like spectacle and they're trying to make a bunch of crazy stuff, it's less about the sort of visceral experience. Even though you may expect it to be. So I think that was the only real like critique you can say about RRR.
I get that.
Is just I think that like it's kind of funny because it's a 3-hour movie, and the action is the slowest bits.
that is true.
Yeah, true.
I mean,
it's also like you could tell it's a good movie if the thing that you are critiquing is the action when it's an action movie.
Yep.
Like, at the end of the day, that's what it is. I mean, yes, it's got everything. Like, literally everything in it. But everything is so good. It's not bogged down by plot. It's not bogged down by characters. It's not bogged down by the missing focus in a shot.
No. I mean, literally they have that, Beam has that romance with the British lady.
Yep.
And then she's there a lot in like the first half of the movie, and then she drops off the face of the earth for the second half of the movie, and it's not like I miss her or anything. Jenny.
It's also kind of a great...
That Jenny joke was hilarious.
Yeah.
It's just genius stuff.
It is. It was funny.
It's kind of like a good or funny sort of thing in like an RR that would be absolutely nitpicked by like a CinemaSins minded person, where there's no justification whatsoever for that romance. Like...
Yeah.
It just happens, and it's like...
Why do they like each other? They literally don't understand
There's no characterization of Jenny. There's not even any characterization of Beam. He's just like a force of nature. It doesn't make any sense. You got to make him more believable.
Yeah.
It's like...
Exactly.
You can just skip that. It's like something you can completely skip. You're not even dealing with like an archetype here. You're just like, oh, they love each other. It's that simple. You don't need to like think about it. It's like... Similar in like this is gonna be a funny comparison, but it's like Vortex. It's like they're getting old and they're dying. You don't have to think about it too much. It's like obviously you can think about it more, but it's really you don't need like a contrived sort of characterization of these characters in order to make it like believable. Like obviously you didn't even like need the character Jenny. Why is she even in there? Like he wasn't motivated by love. He wanted to save Molly. He wanted to save the little girl.
Yes.
It's like there's no reason for it, which is why it's so good. It's just in the movie.
Exactly. It's just there. Yep, exactly. We should move on from RRR to... We have 2 more movies. We have our next film, which another unfortunate box office disappointment.
Oh, man.
in light of the quality that was on display, and that is and unfortunately the budget, which was put to excellent use. And that is Robert Eggers' The North. Yeah, it's weird because everybody in my circles saw it, and then when I hear that it was a bomb, it's like that didn't really like resonate with me because
me too.
I feel like I could talk about it with anybody.
Pretty much saw it.
It's one of those weird things where like Eggers, like even or not even like even like Northman's a good example of this, but I think an even better example of this, even though it didn't bomb, it like definitely didn't bomb, was Everything Everywhere All at Once. Because like everyone we know knows about the movie, almost everyone has seen it. It's sort of like held in extremely high regard by lots of people. Total box office like 80 million.
Yep.
Which it's funny because all you ever hear about is like, wow, it's breaking A24 box office records.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's knocking it out of the park.
It's like a perspective thing. Like even though so many, like to us, it's like this is to me Northman is the biggest release of the year as far as sort of status or like esteem.
Yeah, it was for me too.
It was
what I
it
was
was
interested in. But of course, even Northman, I don't even remember what it made. It made like 100-something million. I don't remember. Which doesn't sound like.
Which doesn't. The budget was 70 million. I don't even know if it.
The budget was like 70 million. Then with marketing, that takes it over. I think it probably made somewhere around 100 million.
It made 68.9 million.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I didn't even think it made because like double your budget is
in any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
Like just a top to bottom bomb. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
It was in theaters for what 21 days before video on demand.
Yeah, it went on to video on demand really fast. Northman again. Quick plot synopsis. It's
Hamlet.
It's based off of the Norse mythology that inspired Hamlet. It's the Lion King. Yeah, it's you have kid who is going to be heir to the throne, but then uncle kills king, and son runs away, but then vows revenge and comes back for revenge on the uncle. Yeah, and there's a love story, different dynamics of men and women and whatnot. It's very, very classic. You'll watch it and you'll be like, this is very Shakespearean.
So Northman is of course similar to RRR. So the way that nothing is ever justified. You don't have to justify these things. It's just you think the thing with the Northman that Eggers was kind of going for was he was trying to represent the myth, the Amleth myth, sort of as it was, as they would have understood it, but
as it would have been understood exactly.
But on film, right? Like this is maybe what they would have wanted. Like this is maybe how they would have liked to have seen it.
They would have watched it and been like, yeah, that's it.
Yep. And so you never justify the romance between them, between Amleth and Olga. Because you don't have to. It's a myth.
Which again is pretty representative of just like older storytelling with love. Is that there doesn't have to be a reason for it.
Yeah, because like
they don't have to have chemistry.
The justification is sort of just in your own feelings. Like that's the enduring sort of aspect of myth, is you can have a very simple story, and like the myth itself does not have any sort of moral or like justification. It's in your own sort of experience of the story, what it means, sort of the parallels to your real life. So the meaning of the myth essentially is not in the myth. It's
within the reader.
How it relates to the reader. And so with the Northman, just did probably the best job I've ever seen on film of like sort of doing that. There's no need. There's no need to be like a little, like, oh, these Vikings, they were raping and killing a lot of people. Like, yeah, of course they just show it. Like this was the myth. It doesn't need to be like deconstructed or like
censored.
You don't need to either sanitize it or try to make it like those Vikings. You really got to take those Vikings down a notch.
Because, they were bad guys.
I mean, like, Amleth is like he's not like a good guy.
No,
but it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but he also is in a way. Like I think that's where I think Eggers is trying to portray values of the culture that are different than our own. As far as like when Amleth makes that vow with his dad, not forgetting for whom you've shed your last tear and that you will avenge me and whatnot, like that's what drives him the entire movie. And even if you're like, oh, I wouldn't do that, or oh, I would have left with Anya Taylor-Joy or whatever, like that's not the point. The point is this person in this context is made an important commitment that they're going to follow through no matter what the cost.
I'd also like to deviate for like 2 seconds and just say that I'm so glad to see Bjork on this screen
welcome
again.
Back.
It's literally been 22 years because of the atrocities that happened in our last movie. I'm so glad she's here. It's brief, but it's perfect.
Yeah,
it's perfect,
perfect
in
casting.
every single way. It's incredible. It's literally the best casting of the year. It's there. It is. It's incredible.
Like that's that's exactly the type of person he would put in that.
Yes.
Yeah, like you take Bjork, throw her back then, like yeah, she's a witch. Like she's becoming a witch. She's doing all that. She's doing that. She's managing that stuff. You know, she's the Norn. She's weaving the fates.
I would like to express a similar sentiment towards Willem Dafoe's cock. It was good to see it. It was good to see it forever briefly. Wow.
Apparently, there was probably going to be more of it.
It's there. Yes. Yeah.
It might be lost forever.
Unfortunate.
And
release the.
We'll have to wait for the next Eggers movie.
Release the Eggers cut.
So I would say, in my opinion, the best casting in the movie was Klaas Bang as Fjolnir.
Yes.
He's so good.
It was
unbelievable.
Completely, perfect casting. Because his character is, in my opinion, he's the most human character in the entire movie.
I get that.
Because you never get, like, Ethan Hawke, I'm sure, would have done a pretty human sort of performance, but of course he dies really quick. And so Amleth is, so dead set in his ways. But Fjolnir is, of course, obviously none of the characters are very modern at all. They're not very, contemporary styled. Like, these guys would not behave like this if they came up in modern age. So, but Fjolnir had the closest, because Fjolnir, honestly, is almost the only, I think he's like the only character with a contemporary sort of like character arc. Like all the other ones don't. They don't have such a thing. Like, well, they do, but it's not like, it's more of like a mythic sort of thing. Because, Amleth, has his doubts about his fate, and then, well, of course you can't have doubts.
He has to make a decision.
Yeah, you can't have doubts about your fate because it's literally set, right? That was the myth. Your fate is set.
Well, his fate is set, and yet he's promised a choice between kindness for his kin.
And of course he chooses both.
Yeah, of course he chooses both. And I think going back to what you're saying earlier, the casting of Ethan Hawke, I think, is deliberate.
Yeah.
Because Ethan Hawke, he's one of those people who we just went and saw The Black Phone. Like, he's one of those actors who's just inherently, like, nice looking and sounding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't play a mean guy.
He's one of the dudes.
Yeah, and so when he's cast as a dad and at first is presented to us as, like, a good dad, like, you buy it, and you're supposed to buy it, and I'm sure the original, audience would have bought it, and then it's supposed to be that reversal of, well, actually, he was just a shitbird like everybody else. His relationship with his wife was less than ideal.
Yeah, because when Amleth's a kid, and you get those parts at the beginning, it's not like it's not supposed to be like some sort of like dream sequence or whatever, but or even like told deliberately from the perspective of Amleth, or like how he would remember it. You think like Ethan Hawke is such like a nice guy. Like, imagine like he was your dad and he'd be like the coolest dad in the block. And of course Nicole Kidman is like quintessential like mom.
Yep.
Like just in how she looks and how she sort of acted. Of course the kid was so eager, like he looked up to his dad so much. So like you think like it's sort of like a portrayal of like when you're a kid, you have more idealistic sort of eyes when you look at things. You know, like your kid, like your dad is like, he's the king. He's like the most powerful man in the world.
Yeah.
And,
totally.
And your mom is like, if something ever happens to your mom, you got to be there to save her. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
The casting was perfect, like to fit into these like sort of mythic archetypes where they all were like just completely fit, like what that particular like sort of archetype was supposed to be. Anya Taylor-Joy, she's the exotic foreign woman. The exotic pretty woman you just fall in love with because she's a pretty woman.
I'm thinking it worked. I'm thinking it worked perfectly.
So like, I mean, it just comes down to, I guess people were not really expecting just such a more honest portrayal of trying to just show the myth, not like reinterpret it. Like give like to your best effort like an honest portrayal of the myth as how the Vikings of the time would understand it, with like revenge. Nowadays, we don't think of revenge as something that's good. Like
no, it's always wrong.
People always say like it's not right to seek revenge, and that's
yes.
the Christian morality thing. God will punish them. There's no reason for you to do that.
Yeah.
But back then, when Christians were just swines, they were the swines. They worship a man.
There's a god
nailed to a tree.
It's a man nailed to a tree.
And so back then they didn't have that, the sort of cultural development of, not seeking revenge.
Yeah, this greater sense of justice that is going to fall upon everyone.
Yeah, because
and you actually would curse people and seek out your own justice.
Yeah, because if you wanted to go to heaven back then, you had to die in battle, which is a complete flip side to heaven.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
You die in battle, you go to heaven. Well, that's not what it says in the book.
Yeah, but violence is generally looked down upon. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Vikings had that brutal warrior honor culture.
Yep.
Where Ethan Hawke, the king, he wanted to die in battle, and he did die in battle, so he went to Valhalla. And of course, so I guess we might as well talk about sort of the ending.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
I think the best ending in years.
It's so good.
It's literally just
everything you could ever want.
It's perfect. It is so perfect.
Because just think when you have a movie, you got to have the visual aspect and you got to have the sound, the music and the sound. So in the ending, it's literally just sort of this perfect portrayal of how dying would be like if you believed in Valhalla. You're gonna be there's flames everywhere. There's gonna be blood everywhere. It's all smoky.
You're at the gates of hell.
And then you're just screaming while drums go
and there's people going, whoa.
Yeah, and it's that's what it would have been like. It would have been pure you're in the zone. You're
badass,
so violent.
bro.
Yeah, it's pure bloodlust.
Yep. I also like to say the music.
So
man,
good.
what an just good. Honestly too. I don't know how much you guys have read about it, but
not really
what a feat.
Yeah.
They were. It's literally over 2 hours of music.
Yeah.
There's music almost the whole movie, which is funny because this is pretty contrasting to something that Agent Cooper and I just finished watching, which has a lot of music and sound. Which is not a movie, it's a TV show.
Oh, yes.
Stranger Things, the new season. We unfortunately watched all of it. I won't talk too much about it. I'll say that we didn't enjoy it.
It's bad.
It's really bad.
And you're bad for liking it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But this is I read about the guy he always works with or for his music. He had to learn so many different instruments and make instruments and again record literally over 2 hours worth of music that plays nonstop.
Yeah.
And they had to think in such a different frame of mind because it was supposed to it's supposed to be representative of this myth of the Vikings, and it just nails it. It nails it. It's so incredible the whole time. The music is incredible.
You never have the emotional moment where Alma thinks about what he's done and some emotional music plays. It's
some strings play and it's
you just got that just
I can't believe that my mom actually didn't love me.
Yeah, you just had the guttural experience the whole time.
Strings playing.
Those Icelandic strings and it's just good. And also
it's just good.
The folk music and the bits where they play folk music when he's like, oh, then sons of Fenrir shed your human skin and become wolves.
So good.
Imagine modern orchestral trying to do that. It's you can't.
Yep.
exactly.
Eggers also got a fart sound effect in his third movie in a row.
He had to do
Let's go.
He had to do it. Do it. He's a real one for it.
Yep.
What about you, little cup? I smell a cunning warrior.
It's also and I mean, a lot. A ton of it is in Iceland, so I don't think it's hard to make Iceland look good. Don't get me wrong.
So
However, this movie looks so unbelievably incredible. And I mean, all Robert Eggers movies do. He's one of those guys that I also think really gets it not in a way that with Gaspar Noé where he's moving the camera in crazy ways necessarily, but just his framing, especially he loves to get so close to
Yep.
people.
Does he.
And I'm thinking that more people need to do that. They really do. Let's utilize your space. Let's not have so much negative space. It's also, I mean, isn't this the first time he's, at least with a featured-length movie, he's shot in, like, a standard, I don't know what else to call it, a standard aspect ratio. It's not square, like The Lighthouse, and it's not, I don't remember, The Witch isn't quite square, I don't think, but it's not wide, that's for sure.
Yeah, because I definitely prefer, because I think The Northman is like the scope ratio, like 2.39 to 1, is like typically seen as like cinematic, but like I know that you can't do The Northman that way. You have to have those tall shots. You need to see the sky. You need to see the volcano like erupting.
Yep.
You need to see, people need to be fully standing on in the frame. You need to see all of it, and so it would not have worked anywhere near as well if it was done in a more wide aspect ratio.
Yep.
And another,
he knows how to shoot a lot of different ways. That's for sure, and he's very good at. Sure. Clearly, he's very good at quite a few of them.
Yep.
Another thing is that it has really good use of CG because I mean there's not very many moments of noticeable CG like in regular shots where the focus is not on some sort of mystical thing.
Yep.
Think of the Tree of Kings. Like, obviously, it's a CG shot, so it doesn't matter that it doesn't look real. And the volcano in the background and all of that. But, like, it's really good usage of the CG to create the otherworldly, ethereal stuff. And and of course, just to clean up, like, the fight scenes so you can have guys on, like, strings and then just CG out the strings.
Yep.
So just good use of it, where, obviously a lot of the stuff doesn't have to be CG because most of it's just kind of dudes just kind of hitting each other, but did a just really good usage, like top to bottom, all the filmmaking techniques you can use, like just the sets and the locations, CG, the cinematography.
Well, and like the sets are like all real.
Yep.
It's like really what Vikings were living in.
Yeah,
like it's to the T accurate from what I understand.
Yeah. It is. Well, it's interesting to note that apparently most of the movie was filmed in Northern Ireland, and only a few specific shots were shot in Iceland, which is fine because for the most part they're just like on some effing grass.
Yeah,
they are.
Because there are parts of Ireland that look pretty Icelandic. Rolling hills.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And also parts of Ireland that look like Russia.
Yep.
So just a good, he's just one of those guys who like top to bottom understands sort of the medium, So he knows what he wants to do, and he knows what, he knows how to get to that point, what to do to make sure everything looks as he wanted. It's not the power of the dog. It's not it's not the power of the dog. Of course, the power of the dog. Jane Campion is New Zealander, so she shot it in New Zealand because that's where she's from.
Yeah,
exactly. Man, what are you gonna do? Golly, does it? I mean, it's another one of those instances where it's like it's fine, but it's just like that's an instance where it's like it was a little hard to get past it watching The Power of the Dog. Like it's okay, but it was like okay, this is not this is not Montana. Where this year we got X. Which X is supposed to be shot in Texas, but it's shot in New Zealand, and I didn't even know it was shot in New Zealand until the credits rolled.
Yep.
Desert.
So kind of funny, but
Yep. Yeah. I guess we can move on to our last movie. Now, I guess we never said that these movies aren't in any particular order, but they're not in any particular order, so it's not like we're saving anything for last or started with something or whatever. But our last movie is David Cronenberg's return to body horror.
Whoa.
Crimes of the Future. The other one. The new one.
The new one. Not the old one.
Not the old one.
Not the other one with the same name by the same director.
Golly, it's a great name. Great name for a movie, so, I mean, props.
Made 52 years ago.
Golly.
By the way.
Old ass MF for making movies.
1970 is when
he's a beast.
Crimes of the Future came out.
Crimes of the Future follows a not too distant future. I don't know if I can even call it's not necessarily dystopian. I mean, I guess it is.
Yeah,
but
I
it's
think it's
people's.
It doesn't seem pleasant.
Yeah, I think
it
it's
doesn't seem
just
pleasant.
sort of like a grungy sort of.
It's just grungy, yeah. I guess it's people's pain thresholds have increased, and so that things that would normally be like, they would hurt and we would avoid them, like cutting, or puncturing or surgery or things of that nature, are now done for the sake of pleasure and just for regular life. You need to experience in art. You need to experience pain, just for it to kind of be livable, whether it's sleeping or eating or whatever. And so they have all these different technologies and contraptions designed to facilitate that. It follows this couple that is sort of an artist couple where people are creating sort of new organs, and this guy specifically is creating new organs that certain government bodies are registering, and this person uses sort of the surgery and exploration of these organs and their removal for art, and so it's sort of a body is art type thing that people come to watch. There's this government agency that is interested because they are sort of trying to register all these new organs, and then there's the police who are following this group of people that have developed unique digestive capabilities that allow for the consumption of waste and plastic that the government is actively trying to disrupt because it's changing it's changing what it means to be human. Yeah.
What a classic question.
Stars Viggo Mortensen, Lea Seydoux, and Kristen Stewart. Not as much Kristen Stewart in it as we were led to believe, which is unfortunate because she is one of the best parts of the movie.
I think off the bat here, I feel like what I've come away with the most since time has passed with this movie, I like it more now than when I saw it.
Yeah.
I don't love it. It's flawed for sure.
Oh yeah.
It's probably the one I'm the most critical on, maybe on this list. But I think the biggest thing I've come away with is just how good these performances are, like across the board, but especially Viggo and Kristen Stewart.
Yeah.
I think Kristen Stewart, I think, is probably my favorite part of the movie as well. Every time she's on the screen, it's just her character is an absolute weasel.
She's a freak.
She's a freak, and it's so entertaining. Her delivery is just unreal.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating. And Viggo just seems like he's in so much pain. I mean, you just buy it the whole time. All these noises that he gets to make and contortions with his body, and you could tell for when he's having a lot of fun. But also it's very, I mean, of course it's so believable and endearing. He wasn't the first one considered for this movie. Do you guys know? Is that true?
I think I remember. I looked that up.
About this.
I looked that up at one point.
Because he wanted like big stars for this.
Let me see. Ray Fiennes was attached.
Oh, right.
But Nicolas Cage was his first option.
Oh my gosh, I can't even picture it. Like nothing.
Yeah, no.
Like Nick Cage.
Yeah, it just would have been a different
what I'd give
character.
for a Nick Cage Kristen Stewart movie.
Yep. Which is also so funny because I mean Viggo's a David Cronenberg regular.
Yep.
He's also
he was
just
like the third choice.
Well, and Viggo's also like, I mean, so is, not to say anything about Ray Fiennes or Nicolas Cage, but Viggo is like, he's a pro. He's one of those like upper echelon actors who always understands the assignment, and he understands filmmaking in the way that a lot of actors don't. So he's somebody that you want in your movie.
What I would say about Crimes of the Future is, because I've seen a lot of Cronenbergs, you both have only seen this.
This is true.
So, for me, Crimes of the Future does kind of feel like a retread of a lot of the stuff he had done previously, in sort of more interesting ways.
Which the idea for this movie has been around for a while.
Yeah.
A long time.
So, like the thing with Cronenberg, too, is, like, even though he has a reputation, it's like a body horror guy, he makes, like, gross stuff.
Right.
He's also, like, a really good, more formal filmmaker. So, like, in movies like Eastern Promises or A History of Violence, he's got none of the body horror stuff really going on, but he's just knows how to make a movie. Like, story-wise, composition-wise, he just knows how to do it. So, like, so much of this movie, more maybe contemporary directors trying to make, like, a fucked up movie would completely whiff on sort of the actual like more interesting like aspects of the movie, which like even though the body horror stuff is pretty good,
yeah, it's not really the heart of the movie. I felt there's a lot of interesting things that he's playing with in this movie. Even just what I would argue the movie's almost more about art itself or filmmaking or the art scene as it's developed over years than it is about, I don't know, body. I mean, it's about bodies. It is. But there's a subtext where he's, I think, doing some analogous stuff to what we see in art today and how we experience it and what we sort of, how audiences have changed over the years and filmmakers.
Yeah, it's a very, clearly this was heavily inspired by Yukio Mishima, obviously. It's very
I like that guy.
Obviously, it's just very obvious. Everyone would obviously see this.
Yeah, no, of course.
Where, the end of Mishima's life, where he's trying to merge art and life. And how do you do that? Well, you do it through the body.
Yes.
Of course. So, like, obviously he's not actually really inspired by Mishima here, but it's a
similar idea.
It's a common question, a very, like, modern question of sort of what it even means to literally be, like, to even experience anything in, like, in this sort of, like, detached, like, when you're detached from your body, or, like, you feel, like, freaked out from your own body, which is a very modern problem.
True.
Not too much of a problem, like, even just, like, a decade ago. But, like, so you think, like, Cronenberg was, like, almost 80, and which, he put in something out like this, which feels very, like, contemporary, sort of, at least in, like this stuff it's, like, sort of talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You can clearly tell he's pretty old, but, he's been doing and talking about this stuff for, like, 50 years, and it's only sort of recently, at least, sort of come into, like, the mainstream as a big thing.
Yeah.
And it still kind of hasn't even come to the mainstream as, like, an actual thing to, like, think about. It's more just something that's, like, played with in, like, the movies as, like, something to, like, spook you.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's been doing this stuff for a long time. It's like, this is, I mean, it's a cheap comparison, but this is his Irishman, where he's sort of looking back on his career and his
not his Irishman,
like, combining all the stuff he's done and sort of putting it into his, like, not his last movie, but an end of career movie.
Yeah,
where he thinks about all that stuff and sort of puts it together, because of course it's about the body, but it's also about the art, which is what he's done his whole life, is he's done art.
Exactly. So, like, he has a unique perspective as an artist, having seen how things have changed.
Essentially the body horror artist. Like, he's the preeminent one in film. So it's just an interesting sort of retrospective of sort of how art has changed. Like, you think of, like, the funny little bit where the guy, has all these ears.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. He
sews his eyes and mouth together. And, like, it's like, wow, it's an interesting art piece. And then, like, Viggo Mortensen's character is just like...
It's just there's fake.
He's like...
They're not functional.
He's like, they're not functional. It's like, it's...
And I was like,
it's a bit. He's doing a little bit.
Which is also funny because they, like, advertised that part in the, like, scary-ass trailers.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's
And it was literally a joke.
Yeah.
It's there to kind of poke fun at sort of the superficiality of not just body horror art, like, movies, but just art in general, compared to the real thing, which is what Viggo's character is doing.
I also didn't expect it to be so funny.
Yeah.
Also, like,
it's a funny movie.
It's very funny. Like, repeatedly. I mean, there's some parts that I was laughing out loud at the theater.
Don't let anything slip.
It was literally a legendary moment.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It was perfect.
Like, it is, like, funny, like, thinking about, like, art as slowly, like, the modern struggle is that it slowly gets more detached from the actual, like, living, where it's something you consume rather than something you live.
It doesn't impact you or motivate you to take action or change. Yeah.
It doesn't correspond to any sort of, like, action and all that, and that's, like, the the struggle that so many authors and directors have written about, as art loses its meaning and becomes something more defanged or commoditized.
At best it hangs out in the world of ideas.
Yep. And so that's, of course, what is, the ultimate art. Living your art ultimately is with your body. So just an interesting sort of thing that he was doing there. Of course, he already kind of, he's done with this stuff a lot. Like he takes it, you think the Videodrome route, where it's more about how people can sort of manipulate that sort of thing. And the Existenz is like, what if your body wasn't even real? So like he's done this stuff for so long, so it's just a nice sort of like retrospective of that stuff, which is,
yep.
Of course, I think that older stuff is more interesting because also at the time it was a little more like fresh. Also, like Videodrome and Existenz are like sort of like spectacles are like entertaining and like in like a movie way
as well.
Yeah, The Fly is, those movies are like, more typical like entertaining movies, whereas Crimes of the Future is like I mean,
a lot of talking.
Yeah, a lot of talking. It's more of a thinking type movie.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, I mean he did a really good job with it.
Yeah, like, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Because of course, yeah, it's like going in, I was like, well, what's he gonna do with this? Because obviously advertising's playing off the Cronenberg. We all know Cronenberg. Like, oh, he makes
exactly.
Gross
Always
movies.
Coming back. He's got a lot of pent up shit he needs to get on the screen.
Yeah, and of course this like not what he was making there, but
no.
So if you go in with the right expectations, you'll be able to sort of like understand it more. Because if you go in sort of expecting this is fucked up, like you're not gonna get that. Because
that was like my problem, and I think that was why I was disappointed at first, because I was like, I'd only seen the teaser. I got lucky. I didn't get a lot shown to me for this movie, but I was like, I saw the teaser, and I know about Cronenberg, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I gonna go like, is this gonna be like when I went and saw Titan and knew nothing about it, and it like pushed me to my limits?
Yeah.
But it was like not. I literally was laughing. It was like funny.
Yes.
And it has a lot of interesting things to say for sure.
Yeah. No, and I think it's, I would agree. Like, my expectations were something I had different expectations going into the movie than what I got. And I was able to kind of adapt them mid-movie and be like, oh, okay, that's cool. This is what we're watching. And still enjoy it. And I don't even think I necessarily now wish that it was something else. I'm happy with what I got.
Yeah.
I very much had a good time. I think it's almost, I don't know, it's probably, it's a little underrated from what I've seen people talking about it. I think people have been a little overly critical, or like people have not been able to manage their expectations enough going into it, and I think they've been like really disappointed or have not been able to like adapt to what it is.
You gotta heed Maverick's words. Just gotta manage expectations.
Just gotta manage expectations. You think up there, you're dead.
Trust me.
But yeah, I mean, 6 minutes standing ovation at Cannes, nothing compared to Elvis's.
You cannot trust the Cannes standing ovations, or if they walk
it's just,
out.
I feel like it's become a bit. I feel like it's just something they do now.
I don't know the culture at Cannes, but it's like pretty much, it's kind of like a groupthink thing. It's like it's whoever acts first, the rest of the people are gonna follow.
Unless your name is Nicholas Winding Refn, in which case one half will do one thing and the other half will do the exact opposite.
Yep.
But yeah, I like to say Howard Shore did the music for this movie, as he does for many Cronenberg movies, and I remember enjoying the score quite a bit.
Yeah,
it's simple, but it's good.
Yeah, because it was, I mean, you could really tell it was a Howard Shore score, but like it was also, a lot. It wasn't very Howard Shore-y, but you could tell it was Howard Shore. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's no Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Andrew's scared of a 3-hour movie. He hasn't even seen Lord of the Rings.
Nope. Maybe one day. But yeah.
So yeah, those were the 9 movies we wanted to sort of highlight. There were some others that we didn't talk about that we've seen this year. Like I said, we have a whole podcast on the Batman that you can check out,
which is pretty high for all of us. We all like it a lot.
We all really like the Batman.
We talked about it at length. We talked about it for hours in that podcast.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was not in that one. Just saying, so you don't have to.
Unfortunately,
watch it. I wasn't there.
You're not gonna get the Rad Bot. And then we had Everything Everywhere All at Once. Was a movie that we all enjoyed. It's getting well-deserved critical acclaim. Well done movie. But none of us felt necessarily as strongly about it as maybe some other people did. But still, definitely
really fun movie. A little too Rick and Morty, for my taste.
A little too Rick and Morty. Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Nick Cage movie. Very fun first half, petering out second half. That didn't play into its own joke enough.
Yeah, it's more of
maybe
a
too
Pedro
much.
Pascal is great.
More of a Nick Cage,
Pedro Pascal
movie, which is funny because it's a Nick Cage movie. But
Pedro Pascal, because Nick Cage didn't go Nick Cage in the movie, which I thought was weird.
Yeah.
Not as intensely as maybe you'd like. No. There's Alex Garland's Men, which we all kind of have. We all have varying levels of opinion on that movie, which may be part of why we didn't. Which may be part
love it as well. It doesn't seem. Yeah. None of us are super high on it.
Because I think Alex Garland is, just because of Men's, getting a little bit of a bad rap.
True.
Over like women, or like how women are in his.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know. It's not really a fair criticism, I would say. Because
I agree.
It's all that stuff is not like about women. It's about his perception of women. So like, I don't know, like, you criticize it,
and it's culturally and mythologically like informed like perspectives on women. So it's interesting, and there's stuff there to unpack.
Yeah, because I mean, like, men trying to understand women. I mean, that's what The Northman's about.
True.
You know, so like, obviously it wasn't as insane as like Annihilation or Ex Machina, or as as entertaining as them, but I think he did a good job playing with sort of like the primal imagery and the sort of mythic sort of imagery.
That's the stuff I liked for sure. I almost wish there was more of it, but yeah. And then we have Marcel. Two of us just saw Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, which is a good movie. It's cute. It's got those good laughs and those good cries, and just a good short time at the movies. Nothing too much to read into with that one, I don't feel like. And after that, I mean, we could talk. I mean, there's Black Phone, which is good, like, good movie. It's really
solid movie, worth watching. Obviously it's not trying to be absolutely crazy, but it's real fun time.
Very solid. If you're looking for like a solid horror experience, that's you couldn't ask for more or less necessarily. And I would say that's where we probably cut off like the movies that we would.
I would like to give a little shout out to Apollo 10.5. Neither of you ended up seeing it.
I have not seen that.
No, I didn't see it either.
It ended up going under the radar, but I would say I've always said greatest story to exist.
Yep.
Or the greatest little story that ever happened in real life is the moon landing. I think it's just story. coolest little thing. So you get a story, of Richard Linklater, and pretty much about how he grew up around the space age and around the space exploration and how he tied in with it.
Yep.
And
that is cool.
One thing also, of course, it's rotoscoped, which it's animated. So it sort of adds to that nice little sort of dreamlike quality. And, Linklater is like the only one sort of making these little movies, like, he's like the only one sort of making these little movies about like just growing up in the suburbs, just growing up. Like, this is how we grew up. And he's the only one doing that. So like, it's a nice one. Also has Glenn Powell in it, which is kind of funny. So he's in two movies related to space or flying. So that's just a movie that ended up going under the radar, which is really nice.
I would like to see it at some point.
Really nice little movie.
I would like to. I'm not going to say much about it. I can't believe I'm actually even going to mention this movie, and I'm the only one who's seen it. So I guess you guys probably know what I'm talking about. But I thought Kimmy was a neat movie.
Oh yeah.
Steven Soderbergh. I think it's like, not that I've seen a ton of movies that have dealt with like COVID in the movie.
Yeah.
And the idea of that seems like, oh man, this could be done really, really poorly by probably a majority of people who would approach it. But I think in this movie, it's handled really well. It's like very interestingly put into the movie and affects everything that goes on in the movie. Not a whole lot else to really say. Zoe Kravitz is good in it.
Yeah.
It's short. It's solid. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's cool. And also, I checked, and we do not count movies that only released at Cannes 2021 as 2021 movies. So We're All Going to the World's Fair was a movie that Moofish and I both saw recently that had its U.S. theatrical release in April of this year. And it was very good, and a unique look at modern loneliness and online community stuff.
Yeah, really interesting movie. I didn't quite know what we were in for. I just knew that Alex G did the music.
Yeah, and the music.
And I'd heard it was good. The music is good. And we were watching like the first half of the movie, and I think we were both kind of like, like, what's the deal here?
Yeah, we thought it was just kind of supposed to be maybe scary, and it wasn't being super scary. And then you realize there's more of a human element to it towards the second half that I think makes the whole thing feel more purposeful and human and good, like relevant.
Yep.
So yeah.
I also think we got 2 pretty good kids movies this year. With Minions, Rise of Gru, and Sonic 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Both pretty good.
Yeah. And
and
even
and Lightyear's all right.
Fine. Yeah. Whatever.
It could be worse. It could be a lot better.
For Pixar,
it could
it's
be
bad,
worse.
But for everything else, it's fine.
And then we did see 2 Marvel Sony movies.
Yep.
This year.
They were horseshit.
Yeah, they were pretty bad.
You can figure out what they are.
One of them a disappointment. The other one, like, if you
met expectations.
If you were disappointed, that's on you.
That is literally your fault.
It's literally an awful movie, but like I had a good time. That's what's funny about it, because it's really bad.
It is. And
we were there day one.
Day one.
Premiere in IMAX.
In my opinion, they should have made it mean something, but they didn't.
They really should have.
Yep.
I wish they made it mean something. They tried, but
I don't know. Do you really think they did?
I don't know. Maybe they tried. Maybe Jared Leto tried. It seemed like he was. It seemed like he was trying a little bit. Now that's not to say
sometimes,
good, but it was.
Yep.
But yeah. So those are some of the movies we've seen this year so far. Looking. So maybe just quick top 3. What everybody's top 3 of the year is so far. For me, it's number 1 is After Gang, and then Northman, and then Vortex so far.
For me, my number 1, I already said it, it's RRR. 2 is the Northman, and 3 is Vortex for me.
Yeah, so I put the Northman as my favorite, and then after that you got to go RRR. And I put the Batman as my third.
Yep.
And my 4th was Jurassic World Dominion, which keeps
just
creeping
barely.
up.
Just barely.
The more I think about it, the more I'm like, this is the movie of the year. I'm thinking by the end of the year, if it might be at number 1.
Yeah, I don't think we've necessarily explored the mythological weight of locusts and their inclusion in the story of the film.
They created an ecological disaster.
Man, did they? Yeah. And so we have the Batman pod. You can check that out where we go in depth onto that movie. And then briefly, maybe what we're looking forward to most, either this year
Avatar.
Yeah, it's
Avatar.
At this point,
Avatar.
it's Avatar.
Way of Water is obviously up there.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for Babylon, the Damien Chazelle film, as well as Scorsese's Flower Moon.
We're getting Nope soon.
Nope, I'm excited. Yeah,
it's
very
gonna be
for Nope.
exciting. We get the anniversary showing of The Wrath of Khan, which is not a 2022 movie, but we're gonna do it in 2022.
Yeah, and
so that's exciting.
And hopefully, the maybe without anything set in stone, we're maybe looking at potentially doing some podcasts on some of those Star Trek movies, the originals. Starting with we saw the first one, the motion picture, when that re-released in. What was that, May or June?
I think
somewhere around there.
May.
I think it was May.
May, and then, unfortunately they had this huge gap between that. I mean, even just a huge gap between when Wrath of Khan actually came out originally, which was June.
Yeah.
It's coming out in September, so we're looking forward to watching that, and then maybe watching some of the other originals and talking about them.
Yeah.
And then, I think those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, that's about all I can think of, at least.
I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff, but it's...
other ones like the Fablemans, Spielberg.
Oh, right.
I'm interested in that.
For sure.
But as far as the slammers go, I think Avatar is the only one that I'm like looking for a theater experience. Like that's the only one that I'm like, I can't wait for that.
Yep. That's... Oh, wait. Does this come out this year, Barbie?
Nope, that's next year.
That's next year. Next year, that ain't Oppenheimer next year. It's just everybody's talking about it now.
Yep.
3 tickets for Barbie, please. That's going to be us.
Yep. Day 1.
Nope, not...
And Oppenheimer, day 1.
Josh is taking the road less traveled.
I don't know if we should do it day 1, if you want to reserve the whole day. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
We got a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah.
We do. We have too much time to think about it.
Literally over a year.
This has been the Ubumfa Pod, halfway through 2022. We'll see. We've been a little spontaneous with how we've been kind of coming up with what we want to talk about.